Sweet. Hey everyone, welcome. Can you all hear me okay? Like gesture or not?
You're a little choppy-ish.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's your headphone speakers or what's connecting to it, but
Okay, good to know. I'll
that's a
talk
little better. You're a little closer.
clearer and slower in case of choppiness. But cool, welcome. Great to see you all. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Audrey, and I'll give us a couple intros to the discussion space, and then we'll jump right into it. So yeah, thank you for joining our second dance forum. Tonight will be an open discussion space. If this is your first time joining us, we had our first one last Wednesday, and it was really sweet. And tonight we're talking about dance and digital media. So what does it mean to be in this kind of online space as movement practitioners, and so sharing our visions and reflections and what's at stake and all of that. And you probably know this since you're here, but this is hosted by Collective Sweat Detroit, an organization providing dance classes, artist residencies, identity spaces, and now these dance forums, among other programming in the Detroit community. And our reach is often also to the Southeast Michigan general community. And again, yeah, this is our newest program, so we're happy that y'all are here today. Just want to point out the organizers who are present here in the space today with Collective Sweat. So I'm Audrey, and then there's Bree, who I don't know if Bree is to this direction, but on my screen she is, so we'll just pretend that. And Bree is also going to be our host today, so if you have any problems, any tech issues, or questions that you just need to send to the host, you can use the chat to message her. And then we also have Maddie today and Miriam in the space as well. And we'll all introduce ourselves when we do a group check-in, so you'll get to hear us all speak and leave the space. And I think a few more things before we jump into it. Again, using the chat, we'll use it throughout the discussion in various ways. Is there anyone who does not know how to use the Zoom chat? You can like raise your hand or do a gesture to let me know, and I'll show you, talk you through. Okay, I hear from Kathy T, the sound is better when I'm leaning forward. Okay, great. I'll lean and I'll make it like a performance thing too. Thank you for that feedback. So yeah, using the chat, sounds like we all know how to use chat feature. Cool, okay. Other note, we encourage you to put your name as however you would like to be called, since we don't all personally know each other today. You can rename yourself, and we also encourage you to put your pronouns that you use so we know how to speak to one another. So you can do that by going to the three dots if you hover over your page, and then you click the three dots, click rename, and you can type in, add in your pronouns, and whatever else you would like to add for your name. Cool. And last note from me, you should have all gotten a copy of the space agreements, which is just our general guidelines to hold us all accountable to what it means to be in a space together. But I'd like to just say a few of them to remind us. So presence, we agree to enter the space with empathy, listening from our own bodies, and also take agency for yourself. So if you need to get up, go to the bathroom, or anything else, just do what you need to do. We're in charge of our own selves. Respect, so we ask that we speak from our own experiences, knowing that our own experiences are different. And we encourage you to use I statements. So I have experienced, I blah, 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 etc. as a way to notice our own subjectivity. And if it's relevant, using like a content warning if something feels potentially sensitive for the safety of everyone's well-being. And then lastly, in the realm of privacy, we know that online is different than appearing in person. So as a note, we are recording this session so that we have archive, and this will exist on our website, which is collectivesweatdetroit.org. And that's the only place it will live. If you do not want to be recorded, you are always welcome to take yourself off of the screen by hiding your camera. You can also mute. You can change your name if you want an alias or alias. I don't know how you say that word. I don't know. And If you want to share something in the space and at some point you decide you do not want that to be included, you simply can either verbally say, I don't want it to be in the recording, we'll stop recording, or we'll edit it out after, or you can message Bree and say, oh, I don't want this. Or if you're like lying at home in the middle of the night and you wake up and you're like, oh, I wish this one thing I said isn't in it, you can always email us after the fact and we can take care of that. So there's a lot of choice in what gets included. And I think that's it for me. So I'm going to pass the mic and leading over to Miriam, who will lead us in a check-in.
Thank you. All right, so yeah, we're gonna do a check-in and it's gonna happen in 2 parts. We'll do, if you were here last time, you'll know exactly what it is, but for those of us who are joining, the first part will be more of a like physical centering check-in, and the second part will be the verbal check-in where you can actually, we can hear you. So let's move into this movement check-in first. If you want to move, you can do so if like you need some space, if you think you're gonna be moving around a lot. If you wanna just sit in your chair, that's cool too, all right? So find a place that feels comfortable, that you have enough space to move as much as you need. And we're gonna start by closing our eyes and checking in with our bodies. So just taking this moment to notice how you feel right now. Maybe who knows what you came from earlier. And we're just gonna scan and place our hands on parts of the body as we do a scan down. So starting with the top of your head, placing your hands and giving a little pressure to your head. Noticing how that pressure feels against your skin, against your hair. Changing how much pressure you're giving. Shifting down to your neck. Making sure to get in all of the crevices and all of the places that hold tension, that hold, that you hold throughout the day. When you're feeling ready, moving right on into those shoulders, which is where all of my stuff is. Holding, giving a little pressure. Scanning down through your chest, under your arms. Let's move down one arm at a time, so finding an arm and squeezing all the way down. Feeling the muscles, releasing the tension as you go. Coming back up that arm and across your chest to move down towards the other arm. Squeezing and releasing the tension over there. Coming back up that arm and coming back down the chest to your stomach, to your spine, wrapping around this whole torso area. Feeling your breath as it goes in and out of your belly. Continuing down further to your hips, to your butt. Your thighs. Your calves. your ankles. Briefly, your feet if you want. And let's find a moment of stillness. We're going to take 2 breaths in together and out. So breathing in and out. In. Out. Nice. So whenever you're ready, you can come back to a soft gaze. And eventually your digital self, where we all meet. Okay, so for part 2 is the verbal check-in, and we'll just say our names, our pronouns as a reminder. Wherever you are, where are you right now? Are you at home? Are you in Ann Arbor? Are you in Detroit? And then the final question is, what have you been connecting with beyond your screen in this time? So that can be something that you've reconnected with in this time or something that you found that's new. But what have you been connecting with beyond your screen in this time? So because we're on Zoom, we're going to like raise our hands virtually in the chat. So we'll use our chat, we'll sign up with your name, and then we'll call your name when we need to call on you. So if, for example, if Maddie wants to go, she'll write Maddie in the chat, I'll just say Maddie, and then she'll be able to go. And then we'll just call them in order as we see them arise. So that way everybody who wants to speak gets to speak, and if you don't want to speak, there's no pressure for us to look at you like, hey. So, yeah, cool. So I'll start. Miriam. My pronouns are she, her. I'm currently in Detroit in my little home office. And I think I said this last time too, but I've just, because it's been coming to the forefront of my mind a lot, I've been really connecting with, and maybe reconnecting in some ways with nature. I found myself outside a lot. I find myself like taking care of plants a lot. And so just really having this moment of connecting with other living things in ways that I hadn't really before. So yeah, that's what I've been connecting with beyond my screen. I'm gonna pass it to Maddie.
Hi, I'm muted. Hi, I'm Maddie, and my pronouns are she, her. I am currently in Massachusetts at my partner's house, and I'm usually in Dearborn, Michigan is where I'm, but not today. And something that I've been connecting with is starting in March, I've been learning how to play the electric bass, which I've never played a string instrument like this before, and my partner just had one that he wasn't really using, so I have been picking it up, and it's been nice to like hold a heavy thing and make sounds with it. And it's also like a thing that's just for fun, not really work related, which is very good.
Looks like I'm up next. I'm Bree, she, her. I'm currently in my quote-unquote home office, aka my bedroom, in Detroit. And something I've reconnected with is crocheting. Again, I have like a massive collection of yarn, and I've just, for some reason, life stepped away from it for quite a bit. I used to be like really deep into it. But within these last few weeks, it's something that's like helped me remove from the screen and just kind of be for a bit. And then you always have something cute afterwards. So that's good.
Demi?
Hi, my name's Demi. I'm currently in Waterford, she, her pronouns. But lately I've been really getting back to reading. So I've been really, all the books I've been kind of selecting are very mind-body connection focused. So like The Body Keeps a Score, like Tao Te Ching, things that really just learning to be okay with being still and not as active as we were like pre-pandemic.
Audrey.
Hi, Audrey, she, her. I'm zooming in today from Oakland, California. Something I've been connecting to outside of the screen is pleasure, like in my own body, in nature, with people I love, with just like movement, food, feeding. Those have been the things and strategies. I'll pass it to the next person.
Scott.
Hi, I'm Scott. I use he, him pronouns. I'm at my place in Detroit. And something that has been very helpful for me through this is that I work at a garden. And I've been able to keep going into the garden since like April and see things grow and help make food for people. And that's been really great.
Kathy.
There we go. Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy. I'm at home in my Zoom corner. And home is Detroit suburbs. And I've been dancing at home and hula hooping. Me and my husband go on a walk every day, actually 2 walks, and investing in family and the cats. That's it.
Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I am she, her, and I'm in my home office in Rochester. And I have been spending a lot of time in front of the screen, so I haven't had a lot of time to do too much for myself, but definitely found the love of reading again and trying to take some time to read every day and try to get outside. That's been about it.
Thank you. Brendan.
Hello, my name's Brendan. I'm currently at home in my apartment in Detroit. He, him pronouns, and I've been trying to spend more time relaxing with all the downtime that coronavirus pandemic stuff has given us. I recently picked up volleyball just because it's fun to go outside and hit a ball against a wall, but other than that, just relaxing.
And Al.
Hi, everyone. I'm Al. I use he, him as pronouns. Currently in Ann Arbor, originally Potawatomi, Odawa, Ojibwe land. And I'm similar to Miriam. I've been connecting to nature, more specifically a chipmunk in my backyard that I've named Francois.
That's perfect. Well, cool. Everybody who spoke, everybody's good. Cool. So now I'm just going to pass it. Oh, we have one more. Yeah, Peter.
Hi, I'm Peter Sparley. I've got to say that I've become very aware that I'm totally addicted to the screen, partly because it's my work. I do a lot of screen dance and making a video in my home painting studio in my backyard in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Things that have diversified my sensorium, a lot of walking with my husband, getting to know my husband better after 30 years. You would think we would know each other at this point, but this has really just amplified everything. Trying to learn how to cook. I've been reading a lot about Bach and also painting. I find the canvas is the best antidote to overdose on the screen. and I'm he, him.
Thank you for waving at me so I didn't miss you. So now I'm going to pass it over to Maddie, who's going to really be, Maddie and Bree, sorry, who will be the moderators for our conversation.
And I think moderator is used lightly. Mostly, I'm just going to be sort of offering some ideas and questions, and then we can all sort of talk through those things together, not so much like moderated. We'll use the chat the same way that we just did for the check-in. So if you have something that you would like to say, a statement or a question that you would like to just write your name in the chat, and then Bree will be the person who will sort of call on you just so we don't have any of those like awkward like Zoom like overlapping moments, because things are different on the screen. So the framing for this conversation is COVID-19 happened, and we all experienced a very drastic shift in the way that we're interacting or not with physical space. And so this collection of people, because we have a relationship or performance, and we all saw lots of cancellation shows, festivals, classes, workshops, intensives, etc., and a pretty big to online screen-based methods for teaching, taking class, etc., that weren't being used in the same way before. So, noticing that this change happened. So we just thought we should probably start talking about this like with other people, and it's hard to see other people because of COVID-19. So we're just sort of curious about ways that we used to use screens, social media, digital media, performance online, performance, in screens, how we're using it now, this past couple months, and what are some current approaches and strategies that we've found, or that we're remembering, or that we're uncovering, and how we might continue to cultivate some of these strategies or adaptations in the future. I also have notes, just so I'm reading off of notes. I'm doing that. So I thought we would start a little like pre-conversation, popcorn style. You don't have to use the chat for this part, but I'm just curious to hear some quick thoughts or ideas or questions that people have moving through their brains right now inside of this big topic. So you can go ahead and share whenever you're ready.
I'll start. I'm finding that my relationship to a screen, I've spent quite a bit of my academic career teaching at U of M, teaching screen dance and trying to educate students as to what they bring to a screen, what they have brought up or been raised to believe culturally, how they suspend their disbelief, what makes an impact, but specifically for we dancers, how the human body speaks or does not speak on a screen, on a flat screen. And in the past 5 months, I have suddenly seen the world rush to this these concerns that I've been working with for years, where people are trying to simulate or steal or borrow from or share their sense of reality. And so I think we learn a lot about each other by watching how we respond and relate to a screen. Mm-hmm. I'm really wondering, and Maddie, you said like what happens in the future. I'm really wondering how people will hold on to their screens, or whether in a sense this pandemic has legitimized the screen as not only a viable form for communication, but a viable form for making art. Can the screen be equal to or a transposition of the stage, of live dance? I'm a retired old fart, so it's easier for me to sit back or to dance in my little studio in front of a green screen. I really feel for the younger dancers who are dying to be in spaces and to share the space with other bodies. So I can't speak to that. I really want to hear from you younger folks as to the kind of denial that you've experienced or lack of that sensory exchange, what you have learned and what you want to do when we all come out of this. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, any other sort of like quick popcorn style things before we open up the next phase, I guess, of the combo?
Yeah, I've got a thought. I've been thinking a lot about attention, and how that has changed in the way that we're making performative works, and how I'm certainly used to performance happening in spaces that are dedicated to giving audiences a very focused viewing experience and a very expecting great attention to be put on the work. And I think those norms are shifting, and partly just due to how I'm consuming work now is like often on my phone or like streamed into a TV just in my house. It's pausable usually, things like that. And how do we adjust as artists to this different form of attention, or how do we reject that, or how do we create new modes to try to give more variety to that sort of viewing experience?
I have a quick thought. I'm wondering a lot about what will happen when a generation of kids who grew up sharing a lot of their lives on social media become professional artists. I mean, to some extent, we're already seeing what they're doing, but I'm really curious what it looks like when these kids who are currently 10 and they've had nothing but screens in their hands since they were little, and every generation that comes after them become 25 and are making work. And what does that look like? And how do we support them on that journey, honestly?
Yeah. If anybody has like another popcorn thought, interrupt me.
I have like one quick thing. No, I'm just really curious what's going to stick in the future after all of this. Like when, quote unquote, we're back to normal, like what digital processes we're all engaging now, what will continue and what will cease. So that's where my head's at.
Well, thank you. So yeah, like I'm hearing, like as Scott was saying, this like there was this way of making art that's now needing to change, and then Peter, who has a deep body of work, who's like a lot of experience making work screen, and so I just thought we'd take a couple minutes to like just sort of like acknowledge the ways that like pre-pandemic we were working with or without screens, digital spaces, and social media. So like some examples that I'll offer of some questions, you know, as CSD have been planning these forums, like we all have been like, oh my gosh, what about this? What about this? Like we all have a bunch of like questions in our head too. So some things to offer to get, you know, us thinking about before times. It's like, were you learning choreography online? Were you taking or teaching any online classes? Were you experiencing any online performance, and how did that go for you? And just, you know, like how are we thinking about this online versus physical space? I know for me, I was very invested in the physical space, and online presence or online engagement with dance and performance was like very almost nothing. So I've been through a rapid adaptation period in these past few months. So I've been shifting. And if you'd like to say something, now we'll start using the chat. So go ahead and type your name in the chat, and Bree will call on you.
Kathy, you look like you're ready.
I guess at least somewhat. So before pandemic, I was teaching dance, of course, live. I do a lot of small children. I very often do like the 3s and 4s. The oldest would be like the end of elementary school. And then I run Kathy and Company, and our thing is partnering. So trying to figure out how to do that and kind of like keep our brand or our thing during the pandemic is interesting. We do have a new piece where we did play with the idea of trying to weight share across a piece of fabric. We did like 1 or 2 live streams a year, and that was probably most of our like online presentation. And I've only a couple of times tried to teach class online, and I'm gonna be teaching online in October with ages 2 and 3. So if anybody has any advice on how to keep those tiny people engaged online, I would love it. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Scott.
Yeah. I think one of the ways that I saw digital platforms being used in performance like the year before COVID was I was seeing an increasing amount of work that had a digital or online component and a live component simultaneously, where there was either something simultaneously happening in 2 different spaces that could be interacted between those spaces, or if there's like a live, I think I saw some live installations in like art galleries where you could see that something was happening live on the other end. But and then if it wasn't correlated to a specific time and place of a performance or a gallery or whatever, where the audience's bodies were not in their home, then I think mostly what I can think of is documentation beyond that.
Yeah.
Either adaptations of works for film, or just documentation for other artists or organizations to see to get a better handle on the work, but not for the general audience.
Great, thank you, Scott. Peter, are you ready to share?
Yeah, I'm thinking about how I've always, ever since I started dancing, been interested in the solo form. And I kind of gravitated towards it in the more recent past, because out of necessity that I was working in editing and video, and it was so much easier for me just to place myself in front of the camera. I knew exactly what I wanted, and I wouldn't have to find dancers or whatever. I'm finding that in the past 5 months, we've seen this extreme proliferation of the solo body on a screen. And it's, I think it becomes intimate, it becomes personal, but it also says so much about how bodies relate to the spaces they're in, whether they are interior spaces, whether they are exterior. I think site-specific, which is a term used in academia and in a lot of contemporary dance ever since Martha Graham was at Bennington College in the 30s out on the lawn, but more recently, during the postmodern era, Trisha Brown climbing the walls and the rooftops of Manhattan, et cetera. So what about this solo form? How are people speaking to their cameras? You know, and what does that mean? What can be communicated and how are the sites chosen? We're being invited into so many people's personal spaces, and there is an intimacy there, and I'm wondering whether that'll continue or whether that'll be transposed onto the stage. The one other thing I'm thinking about is curation. I have curated numerous dance on camera festivals over the past 20 odd years. And now we're seeing a proliferation of online streaming or online festivals where people are creating works both specific to the pandemic and also in general. And their only venue or their only space for sharing is either social media or online streaming festivals. So the question is, then what will happen to those festivals? Will they continue to have both live and online streaming? I think people are becoming, whether they like it or not, being very comfortable sitting in their homes, curating their own programming. So I'll leave it at that.
Before Maddie does her segue, does anyone else have any final thoughts they would like to share? Oh yeah, Miriam, go.
Yeah, I think most of the way that I was engaging with it before was probably almost strictly through social media. Well, maybe not strictly, but like pretty much so, vast majority of the time. I think I was seeing a lot of videos that were kind of like tricks and tips for teachers or like things like that, or maybe people were creating like shortened works. And I occasionally saw folks who were creating choreography a lot online get commissioned to do live performance works, and I'm not sure how those ended up translating, because choreographing obviously for the screen is a very different game. But I think those are the two things that those are the things that I've seen the most that I was engaging with before. Yeah.
Yeah, Bree, did you have a thought?
Yeah, I just had a small one that as a person who has like multiple artistic forms intersect, it's surprising that like reflecting on the past, I only use a lot of digital media in terms of promotion, like helping people get their actual live stuff out rather than using it as a means of creating or distributing or engaging in work, which I'm like, huh, wow, why have I not done that before? I don't know. That's just where I'm at.
Yeah.
What about you, Maddie?
That was my main situation is so Scott and I are collaborators. So when Scott was talking about like having kind of a like prioritizing audience experience, making spaces where the audience is sort of like in the dark room or like in the semicircle or whatever watching. And I was like, yeah, we just use social media to let people know about our shows. So we don't have any shows coming up. So like, how do we make work now? So if anybody else has something like to share about like the past, the pre-COVID social media, again, interrupt me. And if not, like what is like we've already been doing, what is going on right now, and like a lot of abrupt changes in like the post-COVID era, we're in it. So like, yeah, how are we utilizing online spaces? And I think a big question that I have is like, what is working and what is not working? So like a lot of things that CSD has been talking and thinking about are like taking and teaching online classes, the like mass accessibility to previously unavailable classes. And I think Peter sort of touched on this, mentioning the like festivals where you used to have to like travel across the country to see the work. You can now see it at home. Like that's, for me, that is like an accessibility, like that makes me think of accessibility. And like, and how are our priorities shifting in regards to our artistic practice on social media? Like for people like me who've always been focused in the theater, like how am I reconceiving of my work in days? And like how people right now producing or consuming performance, maybe how they changing. I'm offering a lot of questions. So if something's specifically resonating with you, you don't have to speak to all of these, obviously.
And also, I've been popping all the questions in the chat if you need to revisit them or need something to spark to speak about.
Yeah, like, yeah, like what's we've talked about the past, what's going on now, and maybe some future. There's a future section, but the future is always coming. We can talk about it now too.
More contemporaneous vibes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to start, but I know one I've been dealing a lot with lately is taking online classes. I've never taken online classes before because I grew up very much like, since I started dance, my parents drove me to the studio and I was like, oh, the studio is where I do my dance training. And so it's been really hard for me to adapt to taking dance classes at home. Yeah, and it's just like a new energy. It's like a new way to, I talked about this last week if people were here last week, but it's like I'm having a hard time making sense of how I hold the space for myself to take class. And so like one thing I'm curious about is like what's going to happen to me and my relationship to training, and like how might classes shift in the future to create more intimate class space. And like I know like Peter had talked about intimacy and like how we're seeing a lot of like solo bodies in private space. And so like in my consumption of choreography and my consumption of dance, it's like I'm seeing intimacy this way, but like I am at a loss for intimacy in dance spaces, like as a mover in class. It's like really not intimate for me, and that's like been hard. So I'll end it there.
Thanks, Maddie.
Mm-hmm.
Peter.
Yeah, I feel for you, Maddie. If there's any value in years lived, I just turned 69. I have just enough space in my backyard painting studio so that I can paint, I can edit video, I can shoot against a green screen, but I can also do my daily class. And I'm pretty much doing the same floor stretches and the same ballet bar that I've been doing for years and years. And there is something so deeply satisfying about the limitations, about working within restraints and just going deeper and deeper into something you know so well. I would suggest that you seize the moment and evolve your own classes and think about what happens from one day to the next. What is different about feeling what you felt one day into the next, and what does it mean to have that kind of discipline? That's a loaded word, but in terms of my work, I'm finding during this pandemic that because I have fewer distractions and I have everything I need, I've started to binge create. I've been doing these large scale projects and I do it every day kind of and it's beginning to feel obsessive and almost a little compulsive. And I reach moments, breaking points where I just have to stop and cry and just like shake it out because I have built up this pace, this sense of urgency and necessity where I've got to be making this stuff. And I have to step back and get perspective. That happens less than the positive moments where I am so grateful that I have the time to make work. But that was one of the reasons I retired, because that's what I wanted. But I'm wondering if that makes any sense with you younger folk. Is there something to seize in this moment where you take this kind of isolation and make something unique of it? I mean, I used to fantasize, what would I do if I was in a prison cell for 5 years? Or what would I do on a desert island? It's that kind of engagement in questioning. I'll leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and Audrey?
Hey,
Audrey's up.
I can kind of briefly share and also maybe respond a little bit to what Peter shared. And I feel like definitely experiencing something quite different. I'm not interested in reproducing the same structures that we've been in before. I'm not interested in online classes really. Feels like the meaning of making work, the meaning of choreography is like becoming lower than like the meaning of like what does it mean to survive right now? What does it mean to like support my community and like show up? And so there, in that way, like dance is becoming more of just like how am I in my body on a day-to-day? How am I using like my experience as a dancer to like loop into my sensations in my body to be present in my day and to like carry on. Yeah, and I think also I had been teaching a virtual or like an online Zoom improvisation class once a week. That actually has been really nice in that similarly I've been adapting it to, again, we're not repeating technique or we can't be together, but how can this online class where we're not together be a space for people to just be personally in their own lives, finding a way to access their bodies. And I think in that way it's become more about a practice of like living every day and offering a dance practice as approaching that thing of like how are we in practice of living versus how am I working on my tandus, because honestly I don't care about my tandus right now. So that's what I've been thinking about in the present moment about dance and virtual space and COVID and all of that.
Thanks, Audrey. Yeah, sorry, I'm popping in and out of mute because the band down there is really jamming, and I thought they were getting a little loud. Okay, Demi, are you ready to share?
Yeah, I think lately, I'm not sure if this has been more prominent for anyone else, but I've been noticing that the meaning within the dance environment or the dance space has been, it's very different now, obviously, since not everyone can be in a studio right now. But I remember like back in the early stages when everyone immediately switched to online. Like personally for me, of course I do better in the studio. Like you'll give me a combination, I can do it right then and there. You hit record one time or you're on Zoom or anything, I need like 20 repetitions before I can even remember it. Like I just get so nervous. Like I'm not finding the dance connection within like the Zoom calls or the video calls. Like there's like such a gap. It could be just because I miss being critiqued by teachers, but that whenever it kind of comes on for, okay, it's time to create this piece, it's time for this video, it never seems like it's enough. Like there's not enough of a connection with, even if it's a solo piece, the movements are not as like loose or as grounding because it's a different environment, and trying to find that within these alternative spaces, I think has been fairly challenging. I know like for some of my students, they've been also having the same issues with just trying to find a connection or just that joy or passion going through the movements and not just kind of half-assing it, and just trying to just get it done, because it's just like, okay, I'm on a call, this isn't an environment, it's not a collective. And right now we've been trying to really form that type of community online, but it's been very staggering to try to connect people to it. So if anyone has any advice on that, that would be lovely.
Thank you, Demi. Kathy.
Hi. Yeah, so this is like a huge rambling of thoughts. First, I'm going to start with my background. I'm an only child and an introvert. So I think that puts me at a very different place thought-wise and motivation-wise. When the pandemic first hit, I was like, oh, time to relax, we're not doing anything. And then my sister-in-law contacted me over Facebook, and she's like, no, you have to get contact out there. The world needs you, which is not necessarily how I think of myself, but so I started creating dance videos, little dance pieces that I could create in a couple of days, sort of improv in a space or with a object that I could find that I was interested in using around the house. And the viewership for my little thing was just like amazing for a while. Then when Black Lives Matters, when all the protests started hitting, I stopped doing that. It just didn't feel like the moment for me to do that. And I started creating a modern dance class to live stream each week. That kind of started from, I was doing Zoom calls, and then the Zoom just wasn't working for me and Kathy and company. So I decided to just keep doing the project on my own. And a lot of it is about that it keeps me motivated to move. It will take me a couple of days to create the class and a couple of days to practice and then to put it on. And I find that it's really interesting who actually participates with that. Like I have a bunch of people who have no intention of dancing or doing the dance, but they'll sit there and watch the whole thing as a performance. Yeah. So what you are presenting online and what it is for you might not be how your audience is perceiving it. And let's see. Also, to speaking to, once I put the camera on me, the camera is an observer. It is sort of a person watching you. And yes, all the creations took 20 takes, and the dance class, I will horribly mess up at least one thing, maybe more than one thing, you know, during the class, always. Yeah, I guess that's what I wanted to say. I'll get off.
It's okay. Thank you for sharing, Kathy. It looks like you had something else to add, Peter?
Yes, please. Yeah. You know, back to what Demi was talking about, I'm sure come fall, if teachers haven't already experienced it, there's going to be more kind of challenge to motivate groups of students online on the screen. I think the big lesson we've learned, or one of the big ones, is how much kinesthetic empathy plays into learning, the learning process, where bodies are together in a space, breathing together, experiencing rhythm, experiencing gravity, flow, and we've learned that we are so dependent upon each other in that process, in the kinesthetic empathy aspect of it. And I don't know how that's going to work. Is it a matter of a teacher learning how to demonstrate for a camera? I don't know. I think it's, I don't have any answers. Something else I've learned in the present is, what is social practice? I mean, it's a kind of a fashionable term that hit academia and the arts about 2 or 3 years ago. What can I do to combat my sense of impotence, of uselessness, of hopelessness, of not being able to make an effect? And I have found that actually the pandemic has caused me to create works specifically addressing these big issues. And that's been a bit of a shift for me. So despite the isolation, I have been more I've done more consciousness raising with myself through this process. 3, I'm making, in terms of connecting on social media, I do a daily practice where I'll put something online. I'll serialize a creation and put one section of a piece online every day to kind of build an audience, but also to experiment with different ways of communicating with groups, people. The big thing about putting creations online is that you never know who in the hell is watching, who is your audience, who are you creating for? I'm still rather baffled. At least at a film festival, you can sit in the audience and see people around you watching your film or whatever. Yes, you get comments, and yes, you can build a really loyal kind of fan club, but I think I have found I have to revise all my expectations about who my audience is, and it's a kind of a strange liminal zone. The last thing, yeah, that's it. Leave it at that.
Thank you, Peter. Scott, do you feel ready to share?
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. One is, Peter sort of just talked about it. I was thinking about this change in, for folks like Peter who are making works for screen already, this shift in how they're viewed, or maybe it's not a shift, maybe people are already releasing work for screen through like social media, and just like, yeah, the uncontrolled audience, both in terms of who is seeing it and like how they are seeing it. So I'm wondering about like how ways to consider, like, are you making the same work? Should we be making the same sort of work? How does the work change if we can't control who the audience is or how they're going to watch it? Or is there some way that people are thinking about in order to try to control those things in a more specific way? And like I'm also thinking about the word control and how that plays into this too, and my expectation of control as a maker. My other question is for you, Bree, if you feel comfortable answering. I think you had a piece that you did online a little while ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just wondered if you wanted to talk about like that experience and how that went and like what you learned from it, just like from the inside, from your perspective.
Yeah, for sure. I'll see how quickly I can kind of like give a blurb and explain the insight. So what Scott's referring to is that Art Lab J had a series. It was called Alone Not Lonely, and they had 3 artists create solo works in the dance space. It was for free for us, and it offered us, I think it was like 6 hours of studio time, which included rehearsal, tech, and the Zoom performance. So that's the parameters. And like for me, I work well when I have like specific parameters, so that was good. For me, in the work that I personally created, it was very important to me that I created it during that day within the space. So what I ended up performing was based off of a lot of reading and writing and scores that I had developed previously outside of the space, but all the movement was improvisational based. Within this space, I also created like the verbal tracks. So I transcribed some of the scores and some of my recent thoughts that I've been meditating on and researching. But like the actual feeling and experience, and this is gonna sound super silly, the thing that stuck with me the most was like the smell of Marley in a dance studio space. I didn't realize how much I missed it. It like was really actually overwhelming, which is why it's like the first thing I think of when I think of this performance. But also as someone as an introvert, I actually thoroughly enjoyed the experience of creating and performing by myself while having someone hold the space virtually. What I also liked about it was I like to structure it like how I structured my classes, like very open, very conversational. So I kind of went in with the intention of making it more chill versus like, look at me do my moves. Even though that's what people were doing, I also wanted to like get people's insights, talk to them personally, which I think, oh, sorry, that's my timer. But for me personally, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It kind of helped me ease Maddie was talking about performance jitters in our previous meeting.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have those as much, like being in a space and being by myself and almost having like a digital buffer actually helped me personally. Okay, I think that's everything. But thanks for asking that, Scott.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Bree.
Yeah.
I think next on our list is Miriam.
Yeah. As you all are talking, I'm thinking a lot about how this translates with other movement styles. Like thinking about movement styles that weren't created in studio spaces as leaders right now. I'm thinking about the way that they're leaders online, they're leaders in the digital space too. Because I don't know if they're like more conducive to being shortened videos or whatever, but I'm seeing when I'm looking at social dance styles on social media, I'm usually more engaged in ways that like I'm not if a live artist is trying to translate their work to video. Does that make sense? So yeah, I'm thinking about that a lot. I also want to bring up TikTok, and you can ask the CSD people. I bring it up a lot, but I bring up TikTok because of the way that people have engaged with dance on TikTok in ways that we haven't seen before. And I think like it's not, maybe it's a short 8 count or whatever, but people who are considering themselves non-dancers are engaging with dance and learning viral dances. And those dance forms have been, these people have gotten jobs. Like these forms have shown up in I don't know, in music videos. Some of the kids who created these forms have gone on to do interviews and be at the basketball game and whatever, and like all of the ways that these forms are these like shortened viral dance snippets. I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot. I've been thinking a lot about the way that TikTok is like really kind of showing you where we're headed in some ways. I mean, and I think we downplay TikTok because it's usually really young creators. A lot of the choreographers are like young Black kids. And I think that plays a role and a barrier in the how seriously we take that. Because these kids this is real creation. If you've ever seen the dance Renegade, that shit is hard. And I mean like for real, really musically like brilliant and hard. So yeah, so those are my thoughts. Those are the things that I've been really noticing. I'll also say as my like last thought, I'm not even on TikTok, but my friends and brothers who were telling me that there was a moment in time where professional dancers who are like mostly in live arts almost had like a little introduce themselves moment onto TikTok and onto social media platforms, like, hey, I'm not usually on here, but I'm doing this now. And so like, what does it mean when there's this mass push like that, so much that it's a trend for dancers to push onto social media like that, to push onto TikTok and say, all right, well, I guess, hey, I have a talent and I guess I'm gonna show you this now. So those are the things that have really been sitting with me. Yeah, that's all.
Thanks, Miriam. Sorry, Peter, if you don't mind, we haven't heard from Al yet, so I think can we hear from Al and then we'll circle back. Thank you. Al, if you're ready then.
Yeah, I was just gonna link real quick because it's really nice what everyone is saying. And as we're thinking about audiences or unintended audiences is the phrase that I'm hearing a lot of, unintended audiences for certain types of whatever's getting made. In terms of what Miriam said of TikTok, the unintended audience started to be some sort of markability. So if we're thinking about an unintended audience, it also raises questions for me of what lens we're asking or assuming people to look at the work with. Because sometimes we don't ask that, we just assume that they're gonna look at it the same way that we're looking at it and expect it, or I look at it that way. And the other thing I wanted to lift up that was linked to this is the way that Audrey framed it in terms of values of what are we valuing to repeat. And I thought that was just a lovely way to frame how we consider work now.
Wonderful, thank you. Peter, it looks like you have the concluding thought on this section.
Okay, yeah. Back to Miriam and her thoughts about TikTok. I will show my age. I've never been on TikTok, so hello. But I'm convinced that, as someone mentioned, this kind of social trend aspect, I'm convinced that younger people are flexing their brain muscles, their mirror neurons, or whatever you want to call it, to develop new ways of learning and picking up movement off the screen that seemed impossible for me when I first started doing it off films in the early 70s. So I think that what I think it was Demi was talking about learning disconnect on Zoom. I think young people are figuring it out, and it's not going to be a barrier to them. A second thing, I think it was Scott, duration is huge when putting works on screen, whether it's at a film festival, but even more so on social media. I'm finding that the shorter, the better. I mean, we talk a lot about attention spans, and particularly on social media when people are just scrolling. The kind of creation that's going to have the most impact has to have an impact, but it has to happen quickly. And again, this is the reason for teaching screen dance, is that one has to compose something within the frame of the screen that's going to be visually and viscerally engaging. 3, I'm thinking about identity politics. I'm wondering how this pandemic and artists showing their works on screens has anything to do with the revolution in identity politics. Are we seeing more gay, trans? Are we getting a dialogue going on screen in our medium of dance that expresses these threads that are so running through our culture? And then finally, I have been compelled to think about age and about my audiences. I made my first video for kids, and it was so much fun to make a piece for like 4 to 8-year-olds. I felt like a kid again, and it was maybe something I wouldn't have thought of had this not been in this pandemic, where I was thinking a lot about who the audience is out there. And also, what can I provide for my neighbor who has a 4-year-old daughter who's like climbing the walls? Like, who can I serve? I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. If anybody has anything else to add to this like chunk of the conversation, now is your opportunity to interrupt me. And since no one did, first I'd like to say that we have about 15 minutes left of the time we planned for. And I think that we would like to go on for another, like maybe 15 tops, if that's okay. If anybody needs to leave at any time, it's no worries, like you're not committed to being here. But I think we just don't want to cut at 8 because there's a lot going on. Yeah, there's like lots of process. I think before we move into this like future moment of like where do we see this going in like another 6 months or like another 3 years? I just want to sort of like reflect some connections that I experienced in witnessing the conversation. And so some things that are like moving through my head are the idea of like kinesthetic empathy is sort of like a big thing that I've been dealing with, and like way we take and teach class now online. How like not only is it like a self-holding, but how like the energy of the other people in rooms like can be really grounding, and how like without that sense of grounding there's like we're experiencing disconnects in like lots of different ways, and like the idea of audience is a thing that came up, and like you can't see, like you cannot witness who is witnessing you. and like cannot even in, you know, we got a theater of what, 500 people sometimes, maybe once we've done this, but like, you know, you can't see everybody, but like they're there. And so it's like, how do we like make sense of our audience, especially maybe for folks who are like used to performing when you can feel them. It's in like these observation changes. I'm feeling like I saw a lot of people how this change in being observed, change in observing, you know, what do we have the focus for as audience members, and like access, like Miriam talking about TikTok. It's no chill, like kids, teens are on TikTok, and teens don't have money to self-produce shows, you know, and like lots of people don't have the resources to self-produce shows. People like work so hard on grants and still don't like be like, they're professional artists who don't have the resources to get their work shown in live spaces. So like, you know, noticing who we're seeing on these platforms is like, who can we keep seeing, and like who can continue to have access to show work, and who can keep seeing work, you know, like who has like how many, this is something now I'm talking about me, but like how many people got to see Hamilton who could have never imagined like going to see a Broadway show like that. I think about Hamilton more than I maybe need to, or maybe enough. But like, yeah, like this thing of who can take class, who can teach class, you know, who can see shows, how are we seeing shows? Those are some things like heard. So like, yeah, 6 months from now, 3 years from now, like what are some ideas for what performance could look like, and for what teaching class could be? Like how can we, like, is it possible to create more kinesthetic empathy in online spaces? And like also, how can we share digital resources? Like how can we, you know, skill share video sound editing, just like knowing that we might be in this space for an unclear amount of time. Yeah, how can we keep supporting each other in this like online space? I guess that was a lot. Yeah.
Peter, ready to go.
Maddie, as you speak, I think about my long history in various communities with dancers, and I can't get it out of my head and out of my heart, is the multiple experiences I've had coming into communities where the dance, it's so factional. There are so many divided allegiances where people have not been able to come together to shape a community among the dance community itself. And this could be in a small town, or it could be in a large metropolitan area. I mean, I lived in New York for 15 years. I was born and raised in Detroit, came to Ann Arbor. I've traveled all over the world. And so I'm wondering if, because we're all in this state of need and of restricted diet in terms of our dance, whether it will make us realize how dependent we are on each other, and how communities will kind of use the moment to figure out how they can mutually survive better into the future, how they can share resources, spaces. I mean, not that this hasn't been done, and my heart goes out to those of you in Detroit, my own hometown, but it's, how do you seize the challenge that you've already been engaged in, but take it a step further after the pandemic? So I'm wondering if we can use social media and these Zooms and this kind of connectivity to make plans for the after.
Very interesting. Thank you, Peter.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Audrey.
Okay, I don't think I actually prepared my thought as much as I maybe should have, but I
You need
guess
some more time? Or we can always popcorn back. Okay.
It'll be short.
Do your thing.
I think I would like to just see and move towards a future where dance doesn't need to feel like an entryway at which you can only enter into if you have a certain amount of skills or access or money or whatever to like make it to the dance class or make it to the school. I hope that the ways in which movement is becoming distributed can be a way so that anyone, whether you have a phone or not, anyone in the world can claim dance as something that is for them. That's what I would love to see. And yeah, and I also just want to offer for this last section, just want to uplift and make space for any voices that we haven't heard from. Feel free to step forward into the discussion space, and if you shared and want to make space for other voices, feel free to step back. Just kind of want to offer that cognizance. But yeah, I'll pass it to whoever is coming in next.
We don't have anybody currently signed up, but I can offer something that's bubbling in my head. Just like thinking ahead and like just looking at everybody in this space, even though I don't know everyone, I know we're all extremely talented and have a lot of skills. I'm curious about ways of necessary skill sharing that I think all dancers and movers and creators now need to have in a digital realm without having to go to quote unquote YouTube University and only teach yourself, because not everyone can work that way. I don't necessarily have an answer. That's something that actually just popped up for me today that I'm really curious about. Because I am someone who's a typical self-learner, so that's an easy space for me to occupy, but that's not always for everybody. And just thinking about how, like, with the unique intersections that I have with my workforce, that like I want to be able to share those things with dancers. Like we all now, since we're more in of a freelance space, we're kind of I'm not speaking for everybody, but moving away from company life or like project based. Like you have to be able to transcribe now your work to these digital spheres, and then eventually whenever we can be in performance spaces, like how can you promote yourself to the best of your capabilities and reach the people that you want to reach? So that's something I'm thinking about in the potential future / kind of now, not gonna lie. Oh, okay, I was just about to say something. Demi, go ahead.
Actually, kind of stemming off of your point, I think that's actually, it'd be really interesting to see more collaborative work going on. I know that we have these like body language lab coming in. We have like just different mashup, like Art Lab J is huge in that, Detroit Dance City Festival, amazing for it. But I have also been seeing that there has been a shift to like, oh, which company are you going for? Oh no, I'm gonna go try doing my own projects. And I think maybe trying to influence that, I don't have an answer either, but I think trying to really promote these small artists, even if it's just like doing Sidewalk Detroit, you know, getting your work out there, being seen, just saying you're not alone in the space, like this community is here and it's relevant, you know, and trying to uplift that. I don't know if that's maybe promotion based or just posting something on social media, or just showing like small little bits of work just like out in downtown Detroit, honestly, or just like in city spaces where it kind of grabs your eye to be like, oh, there's something going on, there's a community, there's life here, you know. It'd be really interesting to see more collaborative work.
Yeah, you definitely raised some interesting points that I know as a collective we've talked about, that like even though we all like right now, like Audrey's all the way in California, we can connect across the board, but there needs to be this refocusing and recentering of like what's happening here, what's happening now, like when we can come together in the space. So thank you for touching on that. Kathy.
Just one little quick tip. Before you get really, really deep into a project, whatever platform you're going to use and whatever devices you're going to use, read the fine print before you plan something, because they all seem to have some kind of weird rules. So you want to make sure that you can do it before you invest tons of artistic passion. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really nice little tip. Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, like the way that we're all, like when you do like when you do, like, I come from like a very like modern dance world. But it's not like you sort of like learn how to self-produce a show in person and like all the boxes you need to check. But I was like, yeah, I never even thought about like, does somebody own my material if I, you know what it's like, oh, like does Zoom own my video if I have a Zoom show? Like I never thought about that just now, Kathy. So I was like copyright, like what music? I don't know. Yeah, thank you, Kathy. And like also another thing I've been thinking about in this like future realm is like I wonder how can in like it like in the sort of sphere I most occupy as a maker mover is one that is like more geared toward like traditional performance, as I sort of said, and like traditional but like that's sort of the tradition I come from, maybe or like work from. And so I'm curious about how like moving forward, like what other kinds of like, processes can I value, like, you know, like how much, like what, like if it takes me, you know, a year and a half to make a live show, and then but like who knows what live performance is in a year and a half, it's like what other like methods can I incorporate or like devise or like adapt to, and then like 6 years from now, like maybe like what I'm curious about, like the small scale versus large scale, or that's how I think of it, like the small scale versus like large scale process, and like what like maybe, and like the pressure, it's like when you're trying to like self-produce a show or go to a fringe festival or whatever, it's like it feels like there's a lot of pressure on this big thing. But I'm curious about like future of like, oh yeah, like if what does the short form work look like? What does the 3 minutes for this look like? What, you know, how can I value this kind of work? How can I value like short form TikTok dances, and you know, and like how can that create value in these other like methods of performance? So that's the thing I'm thinking about right now in this like future space. I think Peter has a final thought, and then we'll move into like more of a closed method after Peter.
Okay, I've got to get going, but I just want to reiterate what you were saying, Maddie. I think it's so much about scale. And if anything that modern dancers in particular, more than ballet dancers, more than, they have, we see a history, 100-year history where we've constantly had to reinvent ourselves, our venues, our audiences, our aesthetics. And the challenge for younger dancers is really what you're speaking of. It's being flexible enough to alter and transpose from one scale to another, whether that scale means size of venue, whether it means digital to live, virtual, whatever. It's that kind of flexibility that is I think it's going to be a challenge, and it can also bring great joy and pleasure once you get it. And there are struggles, and there are lots of hits and misses, but it's worth it. It's worth it. And do we really have any choice?
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Peter. So we're gonna sort of shift now, like we're gonna shift it over to Miriam, and she'll take us through sort of like a synthesis process, do some synthesizing of all this. Like I need to do some synthesizing. Yeah, my brain is, but Miriam,
You're doing great. You're doing
Yeah,
great.
you got it. You got it. Yeah, so we're gonna move to a whiteboard in a second, and then we're just gonna throw up words or drawings or questions or thoughts around what we envision for the future of dance in digital space. So interpret that question however you want. But we're gonna do that in a second. And so while we're doing that, I'm gonna explain the editing tools while Bree moves us to whiteboard. So at the top of your screen, you're gonna see this little green box and it'll say view options. We'll click the view options and then scroll down to annotate, and then you'll have all of the little, what's the word I'm looking for? You'll have the box of tools, there we go. Tools that you can use. And then if you're on your phone, if you just tap the phone, the little editing pencil will come up. All right, so we are planning to have music for this moment so that it was like less like dead silence. But you can only do the whiteboard or music and not both. So yeah, which is like not ideal, but as they pop up, I'll read them. Or we could just listen to the band.
Can you hear them?
House. Yeah, they are jamming, and I love that.
I'm telling you, every Wednesday.
Let's see. So I'm going to read them aloud while we're writing. So what do we envision for the future of dance and digital space? A continuing accessibility for those who want or need it, avenues to accessibility, accessibility in general, value of all movement styles, value in young voices, collaboration of different types of movement to destroy the barriers, that it's not just digital. I can't tell what it says. In real life too. Oh, in real life too, I got it. Community action, interventions with dance, movement forms about being in our bodies rather than repeating structures of controlling bodies, freedom. Elevation of the digital dance space as professional space, moving away from elitism of live performance. Oof. Talk about it. My body is my body. I like to feel bodies, moving bodies, watching bodies. Room for valuing and viewing many types of work.
I'm just adding some frills. Feel free to add some decoration if you would like.
No, yeah. Screen bodies feel their bodies. Understanding of aesthetics of the screen, not a snob thing. Lots of love. Okay. I think I've read them all, but I'm going to read them one last time, and then we can move. So continuing accessibility for those who want or need it, avenues to accessibility, understanding aesthetics of the screen, not a snob thing, movement forms about being in our bodies rather than repeating structures or controlling bodies, value of all styles of movement. Let's find a way to teach others' bodies without the body. Destroy barriers, collaboration of different types of movement, room for valuing and viewing many types of work, community action interventions with dance. How can you feel my body? Find a way for you to feel my body. Elevation of the digital dance space as professional space, moving away from the elitism of live performance. Language as teaching tool over image repetition. Not only digital, in real life too. I think I got everybody. Value in young voices. Okay. Well, we're going to screen shoot this image and then we'll post it on our social media page and stuff. So if everyone's cool and feels good about it, give me a thumbs up so we can know. Great. And then we're gonna move back to our regular screen so that we can see each other.
It's gonna jump, so don't freak out.
Okay, great. Yeah, all right. And so we're just gonna do a real quick checkout, closeout moment, and then we'll head out. So we're gonna come back to our bodies really quick and start by closing our eyes. And the way that we began the space, we'll leave this space. So this time, we're just gonna take 3 simple breaths in. You can expand in your body as you inhale and contract as you exhale, or whatever feels good to you as you breathe. We're gonna take 1 moment to feel the difference in our bodies as we are in a different place than we were when we first started. And we're gonna breathe in, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And last time, inhaling, exhale. Taking 1 last moment with yourself and with the music in Bree's background. I love it. No, I love it. Leave it. And blinking your eyes open, coming back to soft eyes, and eventually a digital self. Cool.
And apologies, sorry, Scott posted in the chat. I don't know if we added it or not. Just Scott added room for valuing and viewing many types of work. So I will add that little doodle to the screenshot before we share, Scott.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, both Scott and Bree. Yeah, so that's all we have for today's forum. We're gonna do this again next week at the same time, same place-ish. You'll re-register and then we'll send you a Zoom link in the same way that we did this time. So 6:30 to 8. Next week, we're talking about addressing and uprooting from white supremacy and institutional racism and art making, which is a heavy one, and it's gonna be really good. We have 4 panelists next time, so it'll start kind of as a moderated conversation with Madame Penny Galbaldo, Karimu Forshi, Claire Croft, and Dominic Mitchell. So You're not going to want to miss this. These people have a lot of really good things to say and experience with this. So that's next week. Again, we'll have feedback surveys we'll post them shortly so that you can tell us what you liked about this, what do you need to see, what ways to improve all of those things. We'll send those out shortly after this. And then lastly, we're doing these for free. We're not requiring any kind of payment to come in. So if you're feeling in your heart to donate some money so that you can see these kinds of programs continue, that would be amazing. Our Cash App, Bree just put in the chat in case you need it, or Venmo, whatever is convenient for you. And other than that, that's all we have. It was so good to see faces. It was so good to have this conversation. And so we'll see you next week, hopefully.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much for coming.
Hey.
Have a good night.